At a recent interview in France with Kishimoto and Ikemoto, the two authors of Boruto, a fan asked about the eye we saw in the Flashforward sequence. The eye which has severed the fandom in two from the very beginning of the series. Is it a Byakugan, a Jougan, Tenseigan, maybe even just a regular eye? But the debates have been silenced, and we have finally gotten our answer as Kishimoto officially addresses what this eye truly is. So in this video, I want to discuss when we can expect this eye to appear, what the eye even is of course, and finally explaining how this eye holds the abilities of the Otsutsuki god, the fabled shinjutsu abilities. Anyways, let's explain what Kishimoto revealed in this interview about the dojutsu. So like I said at the very start of the video, a fan asked about whether the eye we saw in the beginning of the show was actually a Byakugan, to which Kishimoto responds saying no it's not. Obviously the next question he was then asked was, if it's not a Byakugan, then what is the name of this dojutsu? To which Kishimoto just smiles and says he cannot leak the information about the eye itself and its name since it is entirely a mystery for the time being. However, he does say that this eye is in fact a very special eye for the future of Boruto. Now this statement is absolutely huge, as it shuts down a lot of people that were adamant that the Jougan was not a canon dojutsu. So from what Kishimoto said, we now know at the very least that this dojutsu is important and does actually differentiate from the Byakugan. Now I think the decision to tell the fans as we start to lose interest in this dojutsu that is in fact not just some basic Byakugan, which obviously wouldn't build hype around the awakening, was very intentional from Kishimoto. He knows that if we all assume that this awakening is simply a Byakugan, that there would be a lot less anticipation regarding Boruto's character in the future, given we know the abilities of that dojutsu and also how it isn't going to change much for Boruto's overall power. However, since we know that this eye is special and never seen before, we start to wonder and hypothesize about all of its abilities. For example, how strong will it make Boruto? How will he awaken it? So many questions that we simply wouldn't have if the dojutsu was just a Byakugan. Kishimoto knows what he's doing here by drip feeding us little bits of information at a time to make sure that the fans don't lose interest in the show, and also to ensure that even with the amount of revelations we are receiving chapter by chapter, there is still plenty of anticipation for the future of Boruto. So we have established that this is no ordinary dojutsu, and a lot of people will jump on the Jougan bandwagon after this announcement. However, I think we need to take this a step further and consider that maybe this dojutsu is beyond the likes of the Jougan. If you remember, way back when we got that infamous panel which showed a depiction of the Otsutsuki god surrounded by hundreds of specific dojutsu, due to our lack of knowledge, a lot of people jumped to the conclusion that those eyes were Jougans, with that being everyone's favourite theory at the time. But now we know that the Otsutsuki god was in fact Shibai. Now when we saw a panel of Shibai, we saw that he had 3 dojutsu: a Rinnegan, Ishiki's dojutsu, and another eye which could be the Byakugan, but it also heavily resembles the eyes which we saw in the past. The same eye we assume that Boruto will be awakening. So maybe instead of us theorizing that we are awaiting the Jougan, maybe it is a different dojutsu altogether, one that only the Otsutsuki god had achieved at the point of his godhood, omnipotence. But then the question then becomes, if Shibai had this dojutsu, then how will a human like Boruto be able to undergo such an awakening? We all know that Boruto is now Otsutsuki, so he has a requirement to unlock such a power, but it did require Shibai to undergo many evolutions and karmic reincarnations to reach that power, whereas the only Otsutsuki that have interacted with Boruto are far inferior to Shibai. For example, Ishiki was only able to unlock one of the 3 final dojutsu, and Momoshiki was the same. However, there is an Otsutsuki that a lot of people have forgotten about, and I am in fact referring to Toneri. When Boruto had to deal with the Nue incident, Toneri did not want to interfere and draw unwanted attention towards Earth, so instead he decided to meet Boruto inside of his dreams. Toneri made Boruto aware of this dojutsu, or the power that is hidden in his right eye. But what is more important in this scene is that Toneri said that this eye would appear now to help Boruto, but it would not come back again for a very long time. Not until Boruto's world is in trouble from the threat of Otsutsuki gods. He said that Boruto's eye would guide him to the light that would dispel the impeding darkness, also the fact that he would one day shoulder the fate of the world solely from that right eye, heavily implying that Boruto's Jougan is his biggest and greatest power up that he will ever receive, to the point where he will solely rely on just his Jougan power to save the entire world. Now all of that is great for Toneri to say, But before recent revelations, these statements had next to no validity, and it may have previously seemed as though Toneri was pulling at strings here. However, a recent event that took place in the manga changed my perspective on these statements entirely, and that is in fact Kashin Koji's new shinjutsu, 10 Directions. Yes, this ability is so insane that it brings events that happened at the very beginning of Boruto full circle, and finally it all makes sense. So a lot of us were always wondering, how does Momoshiki harness the power to see into the future, and what ability allowed him to see the fate that Boruto had in store for him? However, we now know that that ability of Momoshiki's was simply foreshadowing for Kashin Koji's true power, as we now see that the vision that Momoshiki saw is in the same format as what Kashin Koji sees when he sees alternative timelines. And it also now makes a lot of sense as to how Momoshiki's visions were altered, as similar to what happened with Kashin Koji's visions, divine intervention took place and Boruto was able to retain control over his body. Essentially, we know Momoshiki also had the 10 Directions ability, just to a much lesser degree compared to Kashin Koji. We also saw this ability much earlier, when Momoshiki was talking to Boruto about his battle with Naruto and Sasuke, and he referred to Boruto's fate relying on his blue eyes in the future, meaning he must have used 10 Directions to see into Boruto's future, and Momoshiki realized that Boruto would be a perfect vessel for his karma. However, it seems as though Momoshiki was not able to harness his power completely, as the only times when he used the 10 Directions was purely on a subconscious basis. And the reason I bring this feat of Momoshiki's up is because it means that all otsutsuki have the facilities to unlock this shinjutsu, meaning that Toneri could have also unlocked this ability. And if he had, then it opens a possibility for these visions or predictions that he witnessed to actually not be an arsepool, and they are in fact awaiting Boruto in the future. Meaning Toneri was telling the truth that Boruto's Eye of Hope, the Jougan, the Otsutsuki God Dojutsu, whatever you want to call it, will return when Boruto needs it most, when his world is most at danger. And it also confirmed that the abilities of the Jougan will propel Boruto far past his current form. And due to how insanely strong Boruto has appeared to be, you know that that means that Boruto in the future will truly fulfill the statement and surpass the power of Otsutsuki gods. Since Toneri foresaw Boruto harnessing unlimited power, not from his Otsutsuki genetics, but rather from his training and shinobi ways. This also links into Kashin Koji's statement that Boruto is key for the future of their world, and that through his training method of teaching Boruto his future techniques early, will significantly boost the effectiveness and efficiency of their training. However, before you all start celebrating that the Jougan will soon arrive, unfortunately we do have to consider the fact that this eye may receive significant changes in design and not be exactly what we expected. The reason I say this is because the manga was originally created by Kodachi, and because the flash forward sequence was so far into the future of Boruto's story, both Kishimoto and Ikemoto said don't take these designs as gospel, and that these designs of Boruto and Kabuki's character are subject to change when it actually comes to the time of that sequence. And we have seen that there has been design changes from that sequence for both Boruto and Kabuki. Boruto and Kabuki's hair are both slightly different, Boruto's slash is slightly smaller, Boruto's karma looks slightly different in terms of its design and pattern, and Kabuki has a new dojutsu, and the list will just keep on going. So that should at least start ringing some alarm bells that perhaps when the Jougan or this dojutsu awakens, it may not be exactly what we expected in both design and abilities, due to the amount of changes we have already seen being made from that flash forward sequence. Also, just to put the people that truly believe that this dojutsu was the Byakugan in the dirt or their graves, where they can rest peacefully on the large doses of copium they've been on for the last 5 years. The Byakugan has many things that differentiate it from the dojutsu we saw in that scene. First of all, if the Byakugan is not in use, the sclera is much larger and passively takes up most of the viewable eyeball. And the way we know that Boruto is not actively using the Byakugan is the fact that we cannot see those veins going towards his eyes. These veins insinuate that the eye is currently active, as it shows that the chakra is currently flowing towards the eye itself. And there has never been a case where the eye is active without seeing those veins, so it definitely isn't a Byakugan, even if you don't consider Kishimoto's comment. So we are aware right now that Boruto is the strongest character there is in the series, due to his training and all of what occurred during the time skip, meaning the need for an awakening like that, especially with the magnitude that it is projected to have, the reasoning remains obsolete. And that was until we saw the Shinju. Since we are now aware that there will be 400 of these guys, Boruto is not going to be able to beat them in his current state, and he's going to have to rely on things that he doesn't use currently, like the karma or perhaps this new dojutsu. And the reason I can guarantee that Boruto is not strong enough or needs to undergo a power up to defeat these guys is due to him being informed by Kashin Koji that he could not defeat these guys at the moment of their awakening. Since Kashin Koji can see into the future, he would have been aware that Boruto cannot defeat the 4 of them and would lose that battle if he stays there, and hence why he told Boruto to retreat. So if Boruto can't beat 4 of the Shinju, he stands absolutely no chance against 400 of them. So I know what you guys are thinking, Boruto is getting beaten by the claw grinds, and poof, then comes a Jougan at the end of a chapter as the ending or the cliffhanger of that chapter. But unfortunately, it isn't nearly as simple as that. So this awakening is likely tied into the karma, since the only time we have seen Boruto activate this eye properly in the manga was after the activation of his karma. Now I know Boruto in the anime used this ability without using the karma, but because the anime is so far away from the manga, I think that there's a possibility that this eye is scrapped from just being an innate ability of Boruto and rather tied into the karma. However, Boruto refuses to use his karma due to the risk of Momoshiki, and I believe it will take an extremely long time for Boruto to actually end up using his karma once again. This is because before the time skip, even after getting killed by Kawaki and revived, Boruto would still use his karma and Momoshiki could still hijack his body when he did that. But we saw after the time skip that as soon as Boruto's karma experienced resonance with Kawaki's and started to activate, Boruto ran off and had a conversation with Kashin Koji about what to do. Now the reason that this is interesting is because it means that Kashin Koji has seen into the future, and he has also seen that Boruto's karma clearly is an extreme risk that Boruto cannot take, meaning that it must be true that in multiple of these futures, when Boruto uses the karma, Momoshiki will take over his body and wreak havoc, meaning that Boruto won't use his karma due to what Kashin Koji has told him, and if he were to use it, Momoshiki would almost guaranteed go on a rampage. So that may change your mind and make you think that this means that Boruto will never use his karma again. But that statement would also be incorrect, since it is literally shown and a big part of the Flashforward sequence. Instead, I think that Boruto, after escaping Konoha, or even if he just returns to Konoha, he will undergo some training solely focused on his karma in order to be able to use that power. And the reason he will do this is because Kashin Koji will see into the future and realize that Boruto using his karma is key in him saving their universe. So the Jougan likely won't come until after that mental barrier is overcome by Boruto. And I'm going to do an entire video dedicated to Boruto's karma, so make sure to subscribe so YouTube notifies you when I release that video. Anyways, I've said this multiple times in the video, but it's all well and good me saying Boruto will soon rival the powers of Shibai, but what abilities will this mystery dojutsu even have that will allow him to do so? Well, it may be hard to believe, but Kishimoto has already foreshadowed a few of the abilities that this eye may have. First of all, we have omniscience, the power held by a god of all-knowingness. The main ability of Ada, which allows her to view all past events as well as see anywhere in the present. This may come as a shock to you, however if you remember, Momoshiki confirmed that the Senragan was an ability which came from Shibai himself. That since his left eye and third eye were already occupied, the power of the Senragan must have been held inside of his right eye, the eye in which we have never seen before, and the one we likely suspect is the Jougan, meaning that Boruto should theoretically have access to this ability after his eyes awaken, assuming that this ability was held within Shibai's right eye. But I believe shinjutsu will be a huge factor in what makes this eye so powerful. It is safe to assume that there is still many shinjutsu abilities which are yet to be seen, since Jougan and Namado were trying to unlock as many as possible, however he only managed to awaken 4, meaning that perhaps these unseen shinjutsu could be abilities native to this dojutsu, and hence why only Shibai was capable of performing them. Alternatively, there could be the possibility that the dojutsu is a requirement to perform the ability, and hence after awakening this dojutsu, Boruto can go a step further by training under Kashin Koji to unlock all of the abilities that the Otsutsuki god was capable of. We know the generic stuff about the Jougan, about how it can see interdimensional rifts and openings, which I believe is severely overhyped by the community. Yeah, it has its niche case use, but apart from when Boruto is facing off against an opponent who actively uses these portals, it just seems like an ability which is used once to to counter Urashiki and then never seen again. A bit like another jutsu we have seen before. Anyone want to take a guess about what eye I'm talking about? I'm talking about the Rinnegan. Yeah, the super cool and innovative eye which lost about 90% of its abilities after the pain fight. Anyways, this is not a rant about the Rinnegan, so let's get back to the Jougan. So this eye allowed Boruto to dodge and counter an attack from a fused Momoshiki, and Boruto at this point, without using the eyes, was probably at the absolute highest level of glazing low Kage level. And well, we saw what happened to the strongest Kage of their respective villages. So the boost in terms of raw power and ocular abilities are going to be huge, but ultimately nobody is that bothered about the pure strength, and what we want to see is cool and unique abilities. Wow, I sound like a spoiled brat at Christmas right now, but when we've all been waiting for 6 years for the Jougan, this is the way that we are going to feel. Anyways, I suspect that this eye has many abilities that only Kishimoto will be aware of until we see the debut of this eye. But finally, the ability that will transcend all of the others is Omnipitence, the final and strongest ability of Shibai, and what Momoshiki called the ultimate shinjutsu. The shinjutsu of all shinjutsu. I think the Jougan will have that ability, and it also links full circle because Ada used the ability of Omnipitence and she also had the Senrigan. So if my theory that much like the Tenseigan is a bigger version of the Byakugan, maybe the Senrigan is a lesser version of the Jougan. So the Jougan will have all the abilities of the Senrigan, and it will also allow you to fully utilize the ability of Omnipitence. And that is how Boruto is going to rewrite history and revert his status back to normal, while simultaneously fixing Kawaki's reputation, making him no longer an outsider, and instead I believe the final power this dojutsu will allow Boruto to do is rewrite everyone's memories to be that Kawaki is actually the son of Naruto, and is truly blood related and part of Konoha, which is Kawaki's ultimate goal whether he accepts that or not, as we know that Boruto is determined to bring back Kawaki and revert him back to being his brother. So this is really as far as we can go in terms of the capabilities of this dojutsu. However, it's always fun in the manga community to theorize about stuff we haven't even seen properly yet. So with that said, make sure to comment your thoughts on this dojutsu's abilities and how it is going to affect the series altogether. So that's going to be a wrap on this video itself, so make sure to like the video if you enjoyed so it gets pushed out to more people. Also, if you want to see more Boruto and other manga theories, reviews, spoilers, etc., make sure to subscribe so YouTube recommends you more and more of my videos in the future. But with that all said, I hope you enjoyed and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.